Hi, I'm Susan Kuznitsky. Welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to do a portrait demonstration for you, showing you how to create beautiful soft skin tones using Sennelier's soft pastels and Cretacolor hard pastels and pastel pencils. Sennelier has been my favorite brand for many years because they're so soft and buttery and they're so pure. They contain so much pigment in their product line and it's just dreamy to paint with. I chose Sennelier's soft pastel portrait half stick set and their set of 24 dark colors, along with some Cretacolor hard pastels and Cretacolor pastel pencils. Let's get started today to learn how to paint skin tones. I love the sweetness of her expression, but did not want such a strong red background to compete with her skin tones, so I used Photoshop to alter the color. This portrait demo, which I have already titled Daddy's Girl, is done on an 8x10 piece of sanded paper. And here in step 1, which is called the blacken, this is a very important stage for any painting, but especially for the portrait. It establishes placement, proportions, and facial features. I'm using a brown Cretacolor pastel pencil. With this one pencil, I am able to establish the placement of the shadow shapes, connecting them as much as possible to create a strong foundation. I like to spend more time on the center of interest, which is the eyes, showing the anatomy and form of the eye socket. I find that once I get this part correct, the rest will follow. I spend enough time on this stage to get a sense of this darling little girl and her sweet expression. A well-executed blacken will make the rest of the process much easier. Step 2. My goal here is to cover the white of the paper with a layer of pastel in preparation for the underpainting, which will follow in step 3. So I begin to lay down local color in large, simple shapes with hard and soft pastels. I'm going for a darker, stronger color at this point in the painting because I know that I'm going to work from dark to light. I begin with laying in some blues, grays, and violets for the background. And I begin to indicate the warm shadow on the side of her face and the shadow side of her hair. I am applying the pastel with a medium amount of pressure when picking up a hard pastel and a lighter touch with the soft pastels. I don't want to overfill the paper with pigment at this point. I am also laying in some color for her little sweatshirt. I know that this color will influence the shadow color reflecting up on her jawline. Shadow color is also added into the eye sockets. I strive to connect the shadow shapes as much as possible, as I mentioned in step 1, to keep the foundation of the painting strong. I am also laying in a general value and color for the light parts of her face across the cheeks and nose, and the golden tones of her hair. Next, I indicate the shadow under her nose, the upper lip, and the shadow under her lower lip. These are key shapes that create a likeness. I will keep coming back to the eyes to add more detail as I go. Step 3 is the underpainting. Once I have a layer of local color on my painting, I can begin the underpainting process. I moisten a brush with Gamsol, a non-toxic solvent, and brush it over the pastel, starting with the lighter color so I don't darken the solvent right away. I'm using just enough solvent to change the pigment into paint and move the color around. I am still thinking in large, simplified shapes at this stage. What happens is that I am creating a strong base of color without using up the tooth of my sanded paper. It leaves me lots of ability to build up the next layers of color and develop the portrait to create beautiful skin tones. It is very normal that I will lose some of my initial drawing in this phase, so after the underpainting dries, I go back in with my pastel pencils to re-establish any drawing I lost. Step 4, applying the pastels. I am now coming back into my center of interest to start building more detail. I use this part of the portrait as an anchor to build around, and you will see me return often to keep adding more details. I alternate between my hard and soft pastels and picking up my pastel pencils as needed for detail and blending. I slowly build up the lightest tones of her skin with thin layers of color. My decision to pick up hard or soft pastels is determined by color and value of what I have available to me. In the beginning stage of learning pastels, you will find the harder pastels easier to manage until you get the feel of the amount of pressure to use. That being said, if you do get too much pigment on your paper in the beginning, or for that matter, at any stage along the way, you can simply take a stiff brush and remove the pastel. This, in my opinion, makes pastel a very user-friendly medium for beginners. It is a very forgiving medium. I start to add more layers and introduce other colors into the shadow mass on the side of her face. The shadow mass is very subtle. I use different colors in the same value range to add interest, yet keep it as one mass. I am picking up a stick of soft vine charcoal. Charcoal is a good tool to have in your pastel toolbox. It can soften and help harmonize colors much like a pastel pencil would. As I layer colors here, I am choosing the warmer color of her cheek area. This will start to turn the form of her cheek as it slips into the shadow. I use my pastel pencils to lightly blend the colors. It becomes a back and forth process as I add layers of color. This is the technique that helps me create the soft glow of the skin. As I am building these layers, I will pay attention to softening edges using my pencils and sometimes a light touch with my finger. Step 5. Refining, refining, refining. As I continue to build up the layers, I will add stronger color with my soft pastels, which contain more pigment, and continue to use my pastel pencils to harmonize these colors without over blending and losing the beauty of the layered colors. Portrait painting at this stage becomes a series of sometimes very minute adjustments. Oftentimes, just a slight change of a curve of a line will capture the character and expression of the subject. One common mistake beginner painters make is making what we call the whites of the eyes too white. They are really a very blue-gray color. My pencils have a few different roles throughout the development of the portrait. They are used for blending the layers of soft and hard pastel as well as softening edges. I use them often when I'm refining the details of the eyes. The highlight of the eye is important. I often put it in early on and take it out as I make changes and reapply it until I get it right. Now I am going to address the hair, adding some more color, and you will see me pull my strokes in the direction that the hair is going. I paint the hair as masses of color instead of individual pieces of hair. Too much detail will become a distraction. And I am adding a very muted greenish umber color to tone down the gold of the hair so it won't overpower her face. As the painting is more developed, I start adding some of the fun wispy strands of her hair that add some fun playfulness and character of this little girl. I added a gray color, the same value as the blue, into the background color right next to her face to help push the background back a bit and bring out the soft skin tone of her cheek. And I can see I need to strengthen and darken the value of the shadow under her jawline. Because it is only the underpainting in that area, I can add a darker value on top of it. I love the way the color of her little green sweatshirt reflects up on her jawline. Reflected lights need to be closer to the value of the shadow than of the light, or they become very distracting. Well, thank you for joining me today on my demo on painting skin tones. And here she is, Daddy's girl. I hope you enjoyed this portrait demo.